What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Cash Physical Therapy Headquarters podcast. Today, we're answering one of the most common questions we get and something that's evolving rapidly right beneath our feet. It is, do you really need a full-time admin anymore? So there's a lot of different options that practices have, and the best one that fits you is going to be determined by what stage of business are you actually in, because there's so many different options for remote admins, for VAs, for PTs, for AI to assist you in following up with your leads, following up with your past patients, and getting people in the door. So today, Ben and I are going to talk about a little bit of a debate that Ben truthfully has been having with a multitude of the coaches on the clinical marketer team, with some of our clients. And then I'm going to sprinkle in some of the stuff that we've been experimenting with voice AI, because the future is looking really, really, really cool. So there's a lot of options out there. So let's dig into it. Ben, how did this idea come to your head?
It came out really out of not necessity. It kind of just happened by luck to a certain extent. So how we have it set up with ProConnects is quite a bit different than probably 99.9% of clinics. And I'd also let's say that's why we're in the top 0.01% as well. So how we have it set up is we do have a full-time front desk staff, but they are simply for front desk. They are not actually calling new patients. They're not doing inbound calls. They're simply greeting patients.
Patient success coordinator.
Yep. So they're all about the patient experience once they're in the door. We have a doctor of physical therapy that does all of our intake calls for all prospective new patients. And that was kind of out of, I held on to that role until we had 3 full-time PTs. I was one doing the calls because I knew and realized how important that role was. It was a pulse of our business. And I had a few admins that would help me out with it occasionally, and they just weren't converting where I was at. Even though they were doing the phone call like perfectly, they were still around 5 to 10% less than I was. And so I just continued to hold on to it. And then I hired on a PT in Des Moines, and he was ramping up. And he's like, "Hey, I'd love to get more hours in. Is there anything I can take off your plate?" I'm like, "Hey, you can try doing phone calls with me." He's like, "Sure, let's do it." And so he did really well, and he was able to convert where I was. And so he just like, "Hey, I really enjoy this. Actually, more than patient care. Would you be down for me just taking on this position full time and take completely all the phone calls off your plate?" I'm like, "Hell yes." So I was so overdoing phone calls. And so he took over the position, and now he's full-time sales. We're actually getting ready to hire a second one because of the lead volume we need to manage. And so I see most cash-based clinics that are just hiring admins to do the front desk, call new patients, greet new patients, social media,
manage their ads, update the website, write the blogs.
Exactly. And they're paying like somebody $15-20 an hour. And yeah, and so it's really exhausting for a person at the front desk to have to wear all those hats, and also change the different types of energy you have to bring. You're switching from greeting a patient, getting a patient scheduled, and then in the back of your mind, "Hey, I'm late to this call that I got to follow up with this lead," and you're just switching back between all these tasks. It's noisy at the front desk. You're on a phone call with a prospective new patient. You got a patient coming down from or finishing up their eval that needs to get scheduled out, but you're on a phone call. You can't schedule the patient out. Now the patient doesn't get scheduled out. Now they're not as consistent with their plan of care. Drop-off rates increase. And it's because you're asking them to do too many tasks, in my opinion, with it. So that's why we switched.
It's wild how many people are shocked that they can't retain an admin for a long time when they're having them in the front end sales role, something that is incredibly emotionally taxing, but at the same time, you're using them as your executive assistant, your emotional rock, your junk drawer that you give all of the crap you don't want to do or don't have time for to. It's like you're giving them responsibility for your emotional well-being as well as your prospects' emotional well-being. And you pay them $20 an hour. Like nobody is equipped with the tools and the abilities to be able to handle that. Nobody. Unless you're paying them extremely well. But even then, it's like you're being pulled in every direction every single day. No matter what you're getting paid, you're going to break at some point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I know you fell into it, but I do think the way that you structured your sales and operations is kind of the future of what great, I guess, patient experience ultimately is, where you kind of divvy it up, where you're in charge of the relationship before they come into the door, and then once someone does, now it's someone else's responsibility. I think that's really smart, but there's obviously stages for it, because what you pay your front office salesperson. What's the official? Do you have an official title for that individual?
Yeah, patient intake specialist is what we call
Patient
it.
intake specialist.
Yep.
Okay. There are so many PTs desperate to get out of clinical care that would kill it in that particular role for a lot of clinics, and it allows them to work entirely remotely. But to have that level of experience and expertise and dedication from a PT, that obviously means you got to pay them quite a bit. What's a good range that people should expect to be able to attract someone like that?
Yeah, so we pay our PT who's doing the calls a PT salary as well.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that is different, and that's the argument that a lot of arguments I've had is like, I don't want to have to pay. I can't afford to pay somebody that. Like, you can't afford not to. So let's do the math on this. So I will admit, starting out, like if it's just you, and maybe you're building up your first caseload of a PT that you've hired, you're not at a point yet to do it.
Yep.
But once you start getting to that second PT, that difference in conversion rate is going to start impacting things. So we just find that across the board, the authority that the PT comes with on that phone call, and the fact that they know that they're talking to a doctor of physical therapy, and there's more conviction in their recommendation. So we find that even if the phone script and the conversation goes the exact same from an admin to a PT is still going to convert 5 to 10% higher. Yeah. Okay. So let's do the math on this. Like, let's say you have 20, like as you grow and scale, let's say you have 20 leads that come in through your door. Let's say that there's a 10% conversion difference between a front desk admin, like general admin, and a doctor of physical therapy. That is two new patients that you otherwise wouldn't get. For us, a plan of care is over $2,000. It's around $2,300. For a simple number, let's just call it 2,000. So right. two new patients I otherwise wouldn't every single week for a year. We'll do a year. What would be the difference? So 2 patients times $2,000, that's what they're worth. That's $4,000 difference per week. Times that by 52 weeks, that's a difference of $208,000. This is what I mean is what you can't afford not to. Right? I'll pay that extra. I will pay an extra. Usually we pay admins between, again, it's going to differ across the US, but for the Bay Area, like 20 to 25 is standard.
Yep.
And so essentially you're most likely going to, depending on where you're at in the area, you're probably have to pay double for a physical therapist than you would an admin. Right. But you're gonna have less turnover. You can just see that there's $208,000, right. I'm sacrificing $40,000 to get $208,000, right? That's a 5x return. I'll take that every time. I put $40 in, I got $208,000 back. Right. So this is the whole point of like letting numbers make your decision, not your emotional basis. Like, I don't want to have to pay somebody a little bit more. No, what's your ROI on that? Like, what is the number that you're getting back on that? And so yeah, good.
And the turnover factor. It's like, how many admins do you need to go through before you're like, all right, maybe I just need to like pay them a little bit more to manage these tasks better and get someone who's a little bit more committed. Make it a bigger like loss if they leave the job.
Right. You're losing so much more. And not only that, but I want to say this in a nice way, but it's unreasonable for us to expect somebody that's making close to minimum wage to be able to wear all these hats and have these skill sets. Yeah. If they had these skill sets, they wouldn't be working a minimum wage job. Right. Or they're going to be using this as a stepping stone, which again creates turnover. If they do have a skill set, they're going to want to continue to level up, and they're going to take on new positions. So either way, there's going to be turnover because of it, right? Like, you're asking somebody to be highly emotionally intelligent on these phone calls, a sales specialist. Like, it is very taxing to do that. Yeah. Now you're asking them to have this energy level and charisma for in person as well, while also being highly organized for an admin task, while also being proficient in time management. Like if somebody has all that skill set, they're not going to be taking a position that's close to minimum wage job.
Just because they can does not mean that they will. I think a lot of people, because they're like, they know that this person has the potential to do these things and do them well. It's like, why would they give themselves to you in that capacity? Like, why would they exert themselves to that degree for that little of, an income? They'd have to be so bought into the vision of the business. And the only time people I've found buy into the company culture and the vision is when they can see that their vision and their dreams for themselves are achievable through the growth of that company. And I struggle to see how someone making $20 an hour could see their lives drastically changing for the better by dying on the hill with you to do your tasks that you don't feel like doing. Right. Interesting enough. Have you read the book, The One Thing?
I haven't. But I've heard
Read it. It's one of those that I've seen so many times. I thought I read it, but then a couple of people on the team, we decided we're all going to read it together. And I just started it. Insanely good book. Very quickly becoming one of my favorite ones. But one of the things it talked about in there is the power of multitasking, or the lack thereof, and how it's an absolute myth. And the author of the book, he was fascinated by multitasking because he always thought that there's just, some people that exist, they have superpowers. Like, how can you effectively multitask and get all of this stuff done? And then there's, of course, like people whose entire identities are wrapped up in this thing where it's like, I can handle all of this stuff at once. I'm a pro multitasker, blah, blah, blah. And so him and some people from their university put together a big study of 262 people. I remember 262 because Milwaukee, 262. What's up? Represent. But they ran this study where, the people who declared themselves just to be like okay multitaskers, and then the people who declared themselves as like, I'm a pro multitasker. Literally in every single measure that they created in this experiment, the multitaskers got demolished by the people who only said that they're kind of okay multitaskers. And basically what this proved was like multitasking is an absolute myth. And all it does is if you're doing one or doing two or three things at a time, it just increases your probability of doing 2 to 3 things wrong. And so in every measure that matters, multitasking always is a massive inhibitor of performance and actually doing things well. And so for our admins, the people who are basically professional multitaskers that you kind of force them to be, just by giving them the ability to only focus on one of those tasks, maybe taking the other things and delegating them to another admin. Maybe there's the intake specialist and then there's a patient success coordinator. Just by divvying it up where you have one person only dedicated to doing admin, that alone could give you that 5 to 6% increase that you're looking for, that hiring a PT at a higher price range could do for you, simply by improving their effectiveness and their skill level by giving them that one thing to be responsible for. So that's another way to look at it. Like if you can't afford a PT, great. Find someone else to do all of your extra shit. Hire an executive assistant. Let your admin do the thing that's producing sales and revenue for the business.
Yeah. So I really think that's it's starting to become more and more an emerging thing. Because we've had some of our coaches and clients within clinical marketers start switching to that, and the scale rate is drastically higher. They're the ones that are scaling the fastest, because they've got that process dialed in, and they're getting more people in the door. They're making more of the leads that they're getting in.
Right, and it's really it's sad, because a lot of people who come to us because they are stuck, they're not profitable, their revenue's all over the place. They've come in, they have their teams, and we teach them how to set up their ads. We get them running. They're getting leads every single day, but their response time to those leads is abysmal because their admins who are responsible for it have so many responsibilities. This is just the latest, newest thing that's on the bottom of their to-do list, and they don't prioritize that to the degree that is required to get good results with it. And if they had just taken all of those things, hired a $6 an hour VA, or better yet, built an AI agent with ChatGPT to handle most of that extra shit, and made their only job to follow up and book patients, that would solve all of their problems. But they're so ingrained in their I don't know, their habit of putting everything on this admin to basically make sure that all the systems of the practice flow effectively.
Yeah, and then it just goes to shit when they leave. And you got to teach somebody all this all over again.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of an interesting thing in and of itself, because we've seen that happen over and over again. And then when the owner needs to step in and handle that front office admin tasks, the only thing that they're really managing is the leads. A lot of that other stuff that feels insanely important starts to kind of fall to the wayside. Yeah, they're helping book and reschedule patients, but really they're putting all of their effort into the lead follow-up because that's what's keeping the lights on. But before that admin left, it was like, no, you have to do all this extra shit and follow up with the leads. When it's like, if they left right now, you would only follow up with the leads. So what does that tell you about how you're prioritizing the tasks that you're giving your admin staff to do? There's probably a lot of shit that they don't need to be doing, or there's a smarter, better way to do it. Yeah. So 2 options we talked about so far. Hiring a PT, which I think is the world-class way to do this. And I think a lot of PTs, if you're burnt out in clinical care, there is a massive, massive opportunity for creating this service where you can do remote patient, what would you call it? Intake coordinator?
Patient intake specialist.
Yeah, patient intake specialist. A lot of practices need it. Gives you the flexibility to work remotely. And if you can't find a practice like Ben's that can afford to pay you a full salary, find 2 that can pay you half a salary. Because how many leads is the average clinic generating every single day? Probably not a ton. You can very easily manage multiple locations. So if you're done with clinic care and you want this kind of role, contact Ben and I. We got clinics we can set you up with, and we can train you how to do it. Definitely a lot of opportunity out there. If you like talking to people, if you're good at sales, if you're good at leading people, great opportunity for you there.
Yeah, I mean, we're hiring right now for it.
Yeah, that's right. If you're listening, reach out to Ben and I. We got opportunities for you. And you want to work for ProKinetics. If you want to work with the best, that's the place to do it. Okay, so hiring a PT, working with an admin, but splitting up the responsibilities between an intake specialist and a patient care coordinator so that they can focus on their one thing to greatly improve their effectiveness within that particular role. The other way that people are starting to do it now is by hiring a VA, specifically from Latin America or the Philippines. Those produce the best VAs out there. They're highly trained. Their English is great. Very often they already work with US companies, and many of them barely even have an accent or have learned to hide it pretty dang well. And it's been really effective. One of our clients, Zaki, he implemented this a few months back, and he's paying $5-6 an hour, which is a really good wage for them in the parts of the world that they are from. And they are still booking 35 to 40% of leads from Facebook into booked appointments, which is just under the standard that we're looking for. But that was 2 months into training that individual, and they're paying $6 an hour for them. That is insane. And the amount of gratitude and how hard these VAs actually work is you're like blown away by it. You feel a little guilty for like what you're paying and how hard they actually work. So I think VAs are becoming an insanely good option for a lot of practices, especially who are really early, who are solo, and they just need someone to hit the phones. Even if it's like 10% worse than you, it's like the percentage of leads that you're missing out on because you don't have the capacity to even text them back makes it a no-brainer.
Yeah, it looks like a solid option. And I know a lot of people that use VAs, and I wish that type of buy-in and that work ethic was here in the U.S. as a whole. Obviously, we've got awesome individuals, but you got to sort through it as a team. But we got to sort through a lot of BS here in the U.S. to get that type of work ethic and all that too. So that is something that is invaluable.
right? It's what's in it for me, not a philosophy of being of just like whatever I do, I'm going to do it well,
Right. Yep.
Which is sad. But you had a discussion with some of our coaches around kind of comparing and contrasting the actual raw data between VAs, hiring a PT, having an admin. I'm curious, like, did you pull any insights from the conversations you're having and the numbers you're looking at?
Yeah, it's mainly as you scale, it makes more and more sense. Like we had last month, we had over 250 leads come in the month, right? So like I gave that example like 20 per week, so it'd be 80 per month was a $208,000 difference.
Mm.
We had 250 leads come in. Let's say there's a 10% difference. That's 25 people that we otherwise wouldn't convert. That is, let's times that by 2,000. Yeah, so you're looking at multiple hundreds of $1,000s difference with that. So at scale, it just becomes even more astronomically different and better, and make more sense to hire on a PT. However, when you're starting out, like if it was just me, like I was treating patients, I was a solo practice owner, am I going to go out and pay a PT to do the phone calls and then also pay an admin on top of that to greet patients? No, your payroll is going to be too high, right? So there is a breaking point for me. Ran the numbers, and it usually starts making sense when you start, like I said earlier, when you're starting to get that second PT that you've hired around the half K. So obviously it depends on what you're charging, how many visits they see, stuff like that. But looking back, I would have been at a good point to bring on a PT to do the calls around this when I was ramping up that second PT. There's also pay structures that can help protect you with it, where you're paying a low base, and then you're paying per show up as well, instead of like a salary. And that's how I encourage you to do it. Like that's just how all sales positions is pay a base, and then you pay per show up. So then you're only paying if a patient is showing up. And if you know your data is really solid, like, hey, like for us, we know that if a patient comes in for an eval, there's a 90% chance that they come in, right? So we're paying per show up. We just need at bats, right? We're going to convert them 90% of the time, right? So that's another way to protect yourself, is pay per conversion. But they also, your sales rep also has to be able to make a living too. You got to give them enough at bats. If you're only getting like 5 leads a week, that's not enough for them to make a living off of, and so there's something to be said about lead volume as well, too. So
100%, right. So hiring, it's something that I think you grow into. I think starting with VAs is a really, really good way to get things rolling. At the very least, if you are going to work with a VA, by the way, there's a lot of great places you can go. Upwork.com is great. Filter it by the Philippines or Latin America, and you'll find great talent out there. Hire them and treat them just like you would hire any other human being. It's like there's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of people that don't have talent. Okay. Have them submit videos, filter it out. You can find some really, really great people on Upwork. There's another website that Steph sent me that I can't remember off the top of my head. It's something.ph. But anyway, look for VAs. There's so many responsibilities that you're giving to people that would be a lot cheaper to give to somebody else. And it would allow the higher paid people to focus on higher level tasks that would improve the overall efficiency of the entire business. So I think VAs are a great starting point, and maybe even an ending point for a lot of people if you find the right person, give them the right training. Because like we just hired a VA to help us with inside sales, and she has a nursing background. It's like there's a lot of people out there. You can even find other clinicians, physiotherapists, chiropractors out there that are tired of doing that as well, and they want to work remotely. There's
a group on Facebook that's non-clinical of 45,000 individuals of speech, OT, and PT. That's just those 3 professions. There's 45,000 people in that group. So
is that the alternative careers for providers group?
Yeah, something like that. So it's just like, that should be a wake-up call for the healthcare.
Right. There's so many options. Now, the last one that's becoming an option right now is voice AI. It is getting crazy. It's not quite there yet in like high level. it's about to take, in the next 6 months, it's going to take over the world. And it's going to change how everyone interacts with their phones, just because every single business is now going to have a 24/7 round the clock employee that doesn't get tired, that sounds human, that is just blowing you up until you unsubscribe or you die. It's kind of scary, but it's going to change a lot of things. I think we're going to get better security on our phones, which means we're going to have to do a better job of building trust and relationships before a phone call, which I think is going to create a lot of opportunity. I think some businesses are going to struggle to make that big leap, but regardless, I'm kind of going on a little bit of a rant right now, but voice AI is something that is in beta within Go High Level right now that allows, whenever someone opts into an ad or opts into a website, AI will actually call that individual, and without needing to tell you that it's AI, at least right now, there's no legislation that requires it. It basically takes you through triage, and it can demonstrate empathy, and it has voice inflections, and it's hard to tell sometimes that it is an AI. And within the next 6 to 12 months, you will not be able to tell that it's an AI. And it's really, really cheap, fractions of a penny per minute of conversation, which is insane. So right now we're building that out for our mastermind members, and at the scaling workshop, we're going to be teaching people how to build that into their Facebook ads and their lead follow-up stuff. So I think that's going to change a lot about admin activity. What's your perspective on voice AI and what that's going to mean for the front office?
Yeah, I don't think it's like that. I'm curious to also see the conversion rate. Because like I said earlier, I've heard an admin, we can't ethically or legally state they're a doctor of physical therapy. Right. So you lose that authority piece with it. So I'm curious, because we've had admin that have done a great job with the phone script. They really couldn't make that much more improvement, and they still weren't going to convert the same rate that I do, or that John does, or a physical therapist does. So I'm curious to see what the AI can do, and if it can make up that difference. Maybe I just wasn't, again, I was only 3 years into business. Maybe I wasn't at the point where I was able to coach them well enough, right? So that's the only thing, is you still might lose that authority piece of not being a doctor of physical therapy on the other line of the call. But at the same time, like you said, you're paying a fraction of a penny per minute, and they don't get tired. So how I see how us potentially using that is like on the fringe hours where we can't do calls.
After hours and weekends.
That's kind of where I see it happening, because we're losing all those opportunities right now, and something is better than nothing. So
right, like I would build it to enhance what you're already doing, where, hey, our doc's on the phone helping another patient, but I saw you opted in for this voucher. Tell me what's going on that made you think that was something that you need to do. So it's like, basically it's like announcing itself and building up the authority of the PT, but it's like, while they're busy with another patient, like, talk me through what's going on, to answer when your team's already on the phones, or just outside of normal hours. So it's really exciting. It's getting insanely good. So keep an eye out for it. It is going to change a lot of things within a lot of businesses, but keep in mind that it's like, as you said, Ben, I think people who have a human touch at the front end of their business are going to have a competitive advantage over all the people who only see the profit margin that they can increase by getting rid of the people that they have. So I think it's a huge, tremendous opportunity that if you don't get on, you're going to have a freak disadvantage compared to people who do use it. But it's going to be the people who use it to enhance the team that they already have that are really going to win, rather than all the people looking at like all the dollars that they get to save by getting rid of people.
Yeah, and it should be used as enhancement, not replacement.
Yep, 100%. 100%. So what do you think? The quick recap between the options and the stages in which people should start looking for hiring an admin.
Yeah, I'd say VA to start. Like, if you're like, for $6 an hour, like if you have a half a caseload right now, and you're starting a practice, VA.
Yep.
once you start getting more of a full-time caseload and you need help like with social media, you need help with managing ads or greeting patients, that's probably around when you have a full-time caseload is when you want to really start bringing on maybe an in-person admin as well. And then from there, what I would do is right when I've got my second PT, I've hired on another PT. Let's say I've hired another PT besides myself, hire my first PT, VA and admin, VA remote, admin in person is what I would have.
Yep.
And then when I start bringing on my second PT, that's when I start looking at potentially hiring a remote PT to do the sales call, and then stick with that from there on. But now you've got the pieces. You've got your VA to take like the really minuscule tasks that anybody can do remotely, maximizing that time. Then you've got an in-person admin that can greet patients. Like that VA that's remote, they can't greet patients. They can't be that smiling face walking the door. They can't be scheduling patients out of them to eval. You've already got that in place. So it's not like you're now, once I bring on this PT to do a sales call, I'm firing all these people or letting them go. No, this is an addition. You're just building your team. And it's nice that you already have those two pieces in play of the VA and then the in-person admin. And then now you've got your PT doing the sales call. And personally, this is what I did, and this is why we do it over again, is maintain decreasing my caseload so I can do phone calls until I can hire that PT. So you're still always having a PT doing the sales calls. It's just you until you can find that. It's much easier it's going to help you ramp up your first PT more quickly. That's always the trickiest one, hiring your first PT and wondering if you're going to be able to get people full or not. That 10% is going to make a difference. A difference between you and the front desk. That's where I would decrease my caseload, which means I'm taking less patients, which means I can give more patients to the first PT I'm hiring on. And because I'm doing the phone calls, now I'm converting at a higher rate. Now I'm able to get my PT more full more quickly. Now they're ramped up great. Now I'm looking to offload this so I can start being in the leadership position and manage people.
Yep, 100%. I love it. I think it's the best course of action. I think the only thing, there's one piece in the beginning that people should add. If you can't afford a VA, if you're afraid to have a VA, if you're just not there yet, the other option is having automations and conversation AI that is going to not call your leads, but at least text them and text them back and help automatically book calls with leads who do opt in for you. Because the number of missed opportunities for those of you who are spending money on ads who just aren't following up with your prospects is unacceptable. It's outrageous. It's irresponsible. And you need help. So if you need help setting up conversation AI, if you need help finding VAs to help you follow up with your leads, you can start focusing on other parts of the business. If you're looking for a patient intake coordinator, did I hit that? Did I say it right?
Either one.
Specialist,
coordinator. It could be also
specialist.
It could be patient onboarding specialist, is whatever you want to call it.
Right. If you are looking for help in expanding that area of your business, go to clinicalmarketer.com, fill out an application, get on a call with Ben, myself, or our team to walk you through where you're currently at, help you find constraints, and help you come up with a plan that isn't cookie cutter, that is customized to the constraints and the culture and the goals of your unique business. And let us help you take your practice to the next level and avoid a lot of the mistakes that we talk about every single week on this podcast. So go to clinicalmarketer.com, apply to work with us, and let's have a conversation. Hope you got value out of this podcast here today. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us push the podcast out to more physical therapists who are looking to escape the red tape of the insurance world and looking to serve people on their terms in the way that they see creates the biggest impact in their patients' lives and communities. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.